Some of you know me and some of you don't, but my name's Dan, and born and raised in Northeast Pennsylvania. I came from a loving Christian family. We went to church every week. I grew up going to Camp Judson and all the different camp retreats with all the kids. My whole entire youth was involved in youth groups and different kids programs through the church. I had a great mother, a great father, and a great family, and I couldn't have asked for anything better. Unfortunately, when I got into my late years of high school, I graduated high school and went off to go to college. And when I did that, I went to Slippery Rock University. And, I didn't take my Bible. I didn't go to church. I didn't have a church. I didn't know anybody. And I ended up getting introduced to alcohol. And it really changed my whole life. I went right into it. When I found alcohol, I started getting DUIs. My schooling, because of the alcohol, unfortunately, I found some drugs such as, I wasn't just smoking pot, I was eating mushrooms, and I was eating all kinds of pills, and the next thing you know, one thing led to another, and I started having issues with the law. I got a few DUIs, and I started to really struggle with alcohol. And my mom tried to step in and help. She tried to help me get into a couple different recovery programs. To be honest with you, I've probably been in inpatient, probably 6 or 8 inpatient rehab facilities for alcohol and drugs. I did the thing where I would substitute drugs with alcohol, or I would substitute alcohol with drugs. It was one or other. I never was able to get away from all of it, and I struggled. You got to understand, this was, so you say from the time I was 18 years old all the way up. My entire 20s were all full of drug and alcohol related things. I ended up actually going to state prison. I got arrested for my 3rd DUI, and it took me down that road of going to prison. I did a 1 to 2 year prison sentence in state maximum security prison. And unfortunately, even after going to prison, I got out of prison and I went right back to it. I picked up that bottle again. It didn't change me, and it really didn't. I don't know what it was. I was in a Corvette and I was working. Obviously, I was still I was still an alcoholic and I was still a drug addict, but I was on my way to a car lot. My wife was about to give birth to my daughter, and she called and said that she was going to be going into the hospital to deliver this baby. So, I don't know, a lot of you guys are from the area, but Side Hill Road up here in Northeast, I was in a Corvette, and I went faster than I should have went. And when I went up one of the bumps, when I came down, my wheels were off the side of the road, and I went to get back on the road, and I hit a guardrail and rolled the car, and I ejected from the car, and my shoes ended up on the roof of the house, and I went through a hole that was on the front porch that held the roof up. My body went right through it. I got pretty bad damage. I had bleeding of the brain, and I was unconscious in a coma, and I was taken to the hospital. And when I came out of the coma, laying in a hospital bed, pretty mangled up, broken bones, and just not. I can tell you that I remember laying in this hospital bed saying, "God, my way's not working, and I need help." I've always known God my entire life, and unfortunately, I got away from Him. But that moment that I did that, I felt like something was lifted off of me. And I was in the hospital for quite a while, and when I actually was able to get out of the hospital, there was a recovery program that I was in the hospital that I was working through, and my brain at that point was so bad that I didn't know my mom's name, I didn't know phone numbers, they asked me what giraffe was. I thought a giraffe was bubblegum. Like, I mean, I just didn't know. I was pretty messed up. But when they let me out of the hospital finally, um, we were on our way home, and I've been in the car sales business since 1999, 2000 area. After I got out of Slippery Rocks, I withdrew myself the first year, and I became a car salesman. Um, and that was one thing my mom, I begged her to stop at the car dealership on our way home from the hospital, so she stopped. And, you know, getting back into the routine of things there, I think is a big part of my recovery and a big part of why my brain injuries and stuff had lightened up a little bit. So anyways, I started getting through the recovery phases of all that, and I started to, you know, obviously throughout time I remember my mom and my grandma, and I could start to remember numbers, and everything started coming back together. Today I can honestly say that I don't have any issues with any of that, which is amazing and a miracle, really. But it gets, you know, after that, I got back on and everything was going good, and my daughter was born, and, you know, we were out in the yard probably, I don't know, 2 years later, and we were shooting up rockets that come down, they have a parachute, and they come down in a parachute, and one of the rockets that we shot up when we got stuck in the tree, and I don't know why I did, but it's me to do that. I climbed up in the tree and I wanted to get it out of the branch, and I could barely reach it, and I stepped out, and when I did, the branch broke. And I hit every single branch the whole way down the tree. I broke my collarbone, and the helicopter came, and I was life flown to the hospital, and I had some pretty serious consequences to face there. And unfortunately, at that point, you know, obviously after I got out of the hospital, I was able to get back into recovery. So I've already been in recovery, starting the recovery journey. Now I got all these broken bones, and my mother and my wife told the doctor, they're like, he can't have opiates. He can't. I mean, he cannot do that. That's the worst thing. And they said I had to have them. And unfortunately, even though my mom and my wife and all of us begged for me not to have the opiates, I got a prescription of Oxycontins, and it started another journey in my life, an addiction, really. I was on the Oxycontin for quite a while, and, you know, I didn't think anything of it, and when it was time to let that go, I kind of said, okay, not a problem, and gave it up. And within a day or two, I was getting sick. So I knew, because of my past that I grew up in, I knew how I could get these things. And I ended up making a couple calls, and I got some, you know, morphines and fentanyl and different narcotics that I needed that helped me overcome the pain that I was going through. And unfortunately, I was doing that for quite a while, and I started getting this fentanyl all the time because it was a little bit cheaper, and it was a powder, and I was hiding it, and I would snort it, and I'd be fine. And one time I called the guy, and I said I needed some more of that fentanyl, and I heard him on the phone asking for some H, asking somebody for some H. And so I asked him, I said, "What, do you say H?" And I found out at that point that it wasn't fentanyl that I was snorting all this time, it was heroin. So I'm snorting heroin, and now it's been months, and at that point, like, I didn't want nothing to do with heroin. I knew what it was, I already knew all about the recovery, I already knew all about what they're gonna make me do if I go to recovery, I knew. I knew everything about it. You know, I said, you know what? I'm gonna keep, because during this time, even though I was prescribed like medication from the doctor, and then even after the doctor gave it up, when I was taking this heroin, I was going to meetings. I didn't really realize at that point that, like, I had this problem until I found out I was snorting heroin. And that was the cutoff. That, so I did what I needed to do, and I went to work every day, and 2 days into it, I was sicker than sick. Cold sweats, puking, diarrhea, just not feeling good. I went to work every day. I mean, I got to the point where I could go like this with my hands. I was shaking so bad, and sweat was dripping off the palms of my hands. It was horrible. And I'll never forget that feeling. And you know, I'm like a couple days into this, and I'm like, in a couple days it's gonna get better. But unfortunately, it didn't get better in a couple days. It took a couple weeks, and during all this, was doing this all at work. I would go in and I would lay on a couch, just like that. If somebody came in, I would get up off the couch and I would do what I needed to do to get to the next. And when they left, I would go back and I would sit on the couch, lay on the couch. You know, I was going home at night after work, sick, and my wife thought I had a really bad flu, something, and you know, I have a nurse as a wife, and she, whether she knew or she didn't know that something was up with me, I just know that I kept saying that I was sick. I wasn't feeling well, and hiding and lying, and not really trying to fix any of the issues. But after a few weeks of feeling like that, and I felt a little bit better. I didn't really feel better, but I wasn't sick, I wasn't shaking, and sweat wasn't dripping off my hands, but I certainly didn't feel any better. I mean, it took a while. So that was so now I've had all the problems and pains through my alcohol addictions, and that, now I've had heroin addiction and all of that, and I've been able to cut through it. I did not go back to drinking. Didn't pick back up the drug. I gave up, during that time I gave up smoking pot and all the other things, so I was kind of level-headed with all that. I did smoke cigarettes. Probably, I remember back in the beginning we did Celebrate Recovery at Orchard Beach, and I remember at the very beginning of it that I didn't have the drug and alcohol issues, but I was still smoking at the time. And I remember giving that up, and I remember giving up cigarettes, and I switched it. I started chewing. That was my way to give up the cigarettes. So I gave up the cigarettes and started chewing, and then you know, I did that for quite a while, and then after that I gave up the chewing, and I started chewing like mint leaves and coffee, just coffee pouches. So I didn't have the nicotine, and I got addicted to these coffee pouches, which I still have some. I don't really have the addiction as much as I used to, but that was one of those things that it just seemed like that was the start of it. And then through the Celebrate Recovery program, I found out that like I'm just getting started. You know, I have a lot of other issues that I need to work through. I remember in the beginning, I'd go to work in the morning, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, I would go over to the gas station and I would get a 4-pack of Red Bulls, and I would drink a 4-pack of Red Bulls. And by the middle of the afternoon, I was going back and I would get more Red Bull. I mean, I just had this every day. I had this Red Bull addiction, and when I found out that was like a major problem, and I started reading about it and watching videos about how Red Bull is horrible for you, and I switched it and then to Mountain Dew, and it was the same thing. It's just I would substitute one thing for another, and finally today I drink a lot of water and I drink a lot of coffee. And that's it. But so that was the start of those journeys, and then the other thing that I had that came up as an issue that I didn't really understand was a problem until I started coming to the Celebrate Recovery program was, I would say, you know, lust and pornography, those types of issues became a big problem in my life. I didn't really want to admit it. I never really wanted anybody to find out about it. I had no problem admitting that I was an alcoholic. I had no problem admitting that I was a drug addict, but I didn't want anybody to know that I had these problems with women and sexual desires and pornography. I mean, I didn't want anybody to know anything about that, so I didn't bring it up for a long time. And you know, through the grace of God and praying to God and talking to God and being honest with Him, He's helped me conquer those addictions. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect by any means, but I don't struggle with pornography. I don't struggle with the lust like I used to. I know there's still a lot of triggers, and you know, unfortunately, I do a lot because of my job. I'm on all the social media sites and stuff like that, and a lot of that stuff is there, and you see it. It's hard. Sometimes you just gotta step away. It's really hard to get away from that lust and that sin desires and all that stuff. It can be really hard. But I want to tell you that through the grace of God and being able to come to these programs and being able to admit my mistakes and listen to other people that are struggling with similar things and how they've overcome it. And that's what made me who I am today. And I know Rich was saying that how much I appreciate and love this program, and I'm all in on it. It means everything to me. You know, even though we're not having Celebrate Recovery Ministries over at Orchard Beach, you know, I originally was thinking that I wanted to maybe take a break from Celebrate Recovery, and as soon as I did, I started getting all these phone calls from local hospitals, from hospitals over in New York State, and somehow they got my name and contact information that it was Dan at Celebrate Recovery at Orchard Beach in Northeast, and I've been getting all these phone calls, and you know, maybe asking me to do some one-on-one studies with them, or asking me for if there's a meeting that they can come to, and so between Rich and Laura, I've been able to share a couple of these contacts with them, and we've been, it's non-stop. I get a phone call and I give it to Rich, and I feel like I did my job, and then I get another phone call and it's like, hey Laura, you want to help me? And I'll send it to Laura, and then after that I get another one. Hey Rich, we got another one. Here's your name and phone number. And it's a good thing, and so I'm not going to change that. And you know, if it wasn't for these programs, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I can tell you that I remember people that came in because of an example they seen in me. They came into this program and their whole life has changed. I mean, I witnessed it, and I witnessed the power of God, and I witnessed what this program can make you see and what it can make you do, and it's a good thing. So, I am a grateful believer in Jesus, and I do struggle with drugs, alcohol, and a lot of these other desires that happen to come up, but it's all possible to get through it all, you know, giving it to God, talking to God about it, and because of all you that I'm able to sit down and talk about and be on one-on-one with, makes a big difference. So, thanks.
Okay.